They never told you that the real battle wasn't against the substance, the bottle, the pills, the dopamine, or the habit. They told you it was about willpower, discipline, shame, and failure. But they never told you the truth. They never told you that the thing you're trying to escape is not outside you. It's within you. It's a hunger that no substance can satisfy. It is a silent scream coming from the parts of your soul you were taught to ignore. A scream for wholeness, for return, for healing. The reason you cannot simply stop is because your addiction is not a moral flaw. It is the language of your forgotten self. What if I told you that your addiction is not the enemy? That it is, in fact, your greatest teacher? That what you have called weakness is a disguised signal from the deeper psyche, trying to guide you back home. You are not lost because you use. You use because you are lost. And until we admit that, we will never heal. We will only substitute one form of anesthesia for another, one distraction for another, one illusion of control for another. I am Carl Jung, and in this moment, I do not speak to the version of you who performs well for others. I speak to the hidden one, the broken one, the one curled inside your chest who is terrified of silence. That is the part of you I care about, because that is where the truth is. That is where healing begins. Addiction is not merely about pleasure seeking. It is about pain avoiding. It is not about excess. It is about emptiness. Most people who are addicted are not craving the thing itself, but the state it brings. The relief, the stillness, the forgetting. And this raises the question, what is it that you are trying so desperately to forget? The modern world gives us many names for addiction, diagnoses, categories, treatment plans. But it rarely gives us understanding, and so we try to fight the addiction without asking what it's trying to teach us. And make no mistake, every addiction is a symbol, a metaphor for a deeper spiritual problem, a problem of disconnection from self, from meaning, from love, from the archetypal center that unites your psyche and gives you purpose. In my clinical work, I noticed a pattern. Many of those who were labeled as addicted or self-destructive were not fundamentally broken. They were disoriented. They were trapped in a kind of inner exile, banished from their own soul. These individuals often had powerful intuitions, rich inner lives, and even spiritual gifts, but they were wounded early, rejected, or taught that their depths were dangerous. So they buried them. And in that burial, the shadow grew. The shadow is the part of you that holds everything you have repressed. Your rage, your longing, your unmet needs, your trauma, your shame. It is not evil, but it can become dangerous if left unconscious. Addiction, in many cases, is a byproduct of a life spent avoiding the shadow. Because the pain within us, if left unacknowledged, does not disappear. It transforms into behaviors, into compulsions, into secret wars waged under the surface of your life. You may think you're fighting your addiction, but in reality, you're fighting your own soul, and the soul will not be silenced forever. There is something deeply archetypal about addiction, the myth of the lost wanderer, the seeker who is exiled from his home, cast into chaos, tempted by the illusions of the world, and at some point he begins to forget. He forgets his origin, his essence, the reason he was born. Addiction is amnesia of the spirit. It replaces sacred longing with short-term satisfaction, and yet the hunger never leaves, because it was never a hunger for the drug. It was always a hunger for God. Now, when I use the word God, I do not mean religion or dogma. I mean the unifying principle within the psyche, the self. The self is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious. It is the image of wholeness, the divine pattern of your being. And addiction, though tragic, is often the first cry of the fragmented self calling out for that return, for individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming whole. It is the return to the self, and it begins with a breakdown, what many call rock bottom, not because you have failed, but because the false structures you were living within can no longer contain the truth of who you are. The addiction shatters your illusion. It brings you face to face with the raw, unmet parts of you. And while this is agonizing, it is also sacred. You see, no one chooses to suffer consciously, but suffering chosen unconsciously, through addiction, through repetition, through unconscious behavior, is the soul's cry to awaken. When the pain becomes too loud to ignore, you are forced to listen. And in that moment, if you are brave, you can begin the work. The work is not glamorous. It is not quick. It is not easy. But it is beautiful. Because the work is the path home. What does the work look like? First, it looks like honesty, radical honesty, not with the world, with yourself. You must sit in silence and ask, what am I running from? When did this begin? What wound did I try to bury? Most addictions begin not with a substance, but with a fracture, a moment of betrayal, a time when you needed love and were met with absence, a time when you were punished for feeling too much. These are not excuses, they are origin stories. And until you face the origin, the pattern will repeat. Second, it looks like integration. The parts of you that you've judged, disowned, or numbered, these must be brought into the light. The inner child who cries in the middle of the night, the teenager who rebelled because he didn't know how to grieve, the adult who still walks around with a hole in his chest. These are your forgotten selves. They are not gone. They are waiting. Third, it looks like remembering. The self never leaves you. Even in your darkest moments, it is there, sending you symbols, dreams, signs, that number you keep seeing, that feeling in your gut, that dream that won't go away. This is the unconscious communicating with you. But you must learn to listen. When people ask how to overcome addiction, they are often asking, how do I make this go away? But the real question is, what is this trying to show me? Addiction is the red thread that, if followed inward, leads you to your forgotten soul. In my studies of alchemy, I found that every transformation requires a stage of putrefaction, a death. The addict must die not literally but symbolically. The persona you created to survive, the pleaser, the achiever, the avoider, must be shed, and beneath it something new must be born, something ancient, something true. You may think this is too hard, that you are too far gone, but hear me, you are never beyond redemption. You are never too broken to be whole. In fact, your brokenness is the very place where the light can enter. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to meet yourself, to greet the part of you you have avoided, and to say, I see you. I will not abandon you again. Let that be the beginning, not the end. The mind that suffers under the weight of addiction is not merely weak. It is overwhelmed by archetypes, by inner forces so vast, so ancient, and so deeply embedded in the human psyche that without understanding them, we are helplessly carried along by their currents. These are not figments of imagination, they are universal patterns, psychic blueprints that shape our behaviors, desires, and tragedies. Among these archetypes lives the addict, not as a villain, but as a seeker. The addict archetype is driven by longing, a sacred hunger for connection, transcendence, unity. But because this longing is misunderstood or denied, it mutates. It twists inward, turning pain into poison. The addict does not seek destruction, not at first. He seeks wholeness. He seeks what he lost. But in reaching for temporary relief, he becomes entrapped in illusion. There is another archetype who stands beside him in the shadows, the orphan. This is the child within you who was left behind, unloved, unseen. The orphan carries a belief that no one will ever truly care. That safety is an illusion. That love is conditional. The addict and the orphan dance together in silence. One numbs the pain. The other cries out beneath it. But there is more. Inside you, too, lives the wounded healer. This archetype is ancient. It is the one who suffers not in vain, but in order to bring healing to others. The wounded healer's pain becomes his wisdom. His scars become his offerings. But only if he chooses to look at them, not as marks of shame, but as the evidence of transformation. You are not only an addict, you are also the one capable of alchemy. Each of these archetypes is activated during your descent into addiction and your potential rise from it. The descent is not a failure. In mythology, it is a necessary stage. The hero must journey into the underworld to find what is hidden. He must face monsters, illusions, voices that tempt him to sleep forever. But if he survives, if he chooses consciousness over comfort, he returns with the elixir, and that elixir is truth. Many people ask me, why do I keep sabotaging myself? Why do I keep going back to the thing that is killing me? The answer is painful but liberating. You go back because part of you believes that is all you deserve. You return to suffering because it is familiar, because healing feels like a betrayal to the part of you who suffered, because your unconscious has not yet learned to receive love. This is the power of the unconscious. It is not passive. It is alive, it is active. And unless you integrate it, unless you make it conscious, it will guide your life and you will call it fate. The collective unconscious does not only influence nations and cultures, it influences you. It speaks through your dreams, your fears, your addictions. It speaks through the very thing you are trying to overcome. This is why so many attempts at recovery fail, because they only treat the symptom. They fear the inner world. But the true path to overcoming addiction is not outwards, it is inward. It is psychological, spiritual, archetypal, and above all, deeply personal. You must explore your inner world. Like a dream analyst decoding symbols, you must look at your addiction and ask, what is this trying to say? If your addiction were a myth, what story would it tell? Is it the story of the banished child, the lost lover, the uninitiated hero, the silenced prophet? These are not fantasies, they are truths wrapped in metaphor. And until you decode them, you will continue to suffer under their power. But beware, there is a danger on the path, one more insidious than relapse or failure. It is the danger of spiritual bypassing, of pretending that positive thoughts and light alone can heal you. They cannot. You cannot skip the shadow. You cannot meditate your way around grief. You cannot pray away your pain. These tools are important, but if they are used to avoid the truth, they become another addiction. True spirituality does not rescue you from suffering. It takes you into it and through it. It teaches you to sit with the inner wound without needing to fix it immediately. It teaches you to listen without judgment, to love the parts of you that were never loved. This is not weakness. It is the beginning of real strength. You see, the self, the wholeness you seek, includes everything, light and dark, beauty and horror, rage and tenderness. Until you allow the full spectrum of your being to exist within you, you will remain divided. And that division will create pain, and that pain will seek relief. That is the cycle of addiction. But when you integrate, when you allow all of you to exist, you begin to heal. The modern world fears this kind of healing because it cannot be marketed. It cannot be sold. There is no product that can give you your soul back, no subscription that can reconnect you to your essence. That task belongs to you, and you alone. The path of individuation is the path of reclaiming your wholeness, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. It requires you to say, I will no longer abandon myself, not when I am anxious, not when I am craving, not when I am lonely. I will sit with myself not to punish, but to understand. Because understanding is how the shadow transforms, and love, not the sentimental kind, but the fierce, unconditional kind, is how the addict is redeemed. Many people say, I don't know who I am anymore. And I tell them, good, because now the real work can begin, the work of discovering, not the mask, not the role, but the essence, the soul. And that soul has been waiting. It is patient, but it will not tolerate lies forever. That is why the addiction came, not to destroy you, but to wake you up. Addiction is a fire. It will burn everything that is false. It will strip away every illusion. It will bring you to your knees. But from those ashes, a new self can emerge, a self that does not need to numb, because it no longer fears the truth, because it has faced the dark and remembered the light. You were never meant to live in exile from yourself. You were never meant to carry your wounds alone. But to find healing, you must be willing to descend into the silence, into the memory, into the dream. You must walk backwards into the night to reclaim the parts of you left behind. And when you find them, when you sit beside the wounded child, the ashamed teenager, the tired adult, you must say, you are welcome here. I will not turn away from you again. That is the beginning of liberation, not the end, because recovery is not a destination. It is a rebirth, over and over again. And so I ask you now, are you willing to become whole? The path of overcoming addiction is often mistaken as a battle of control, a struggle of will against weakness. But what if the struggle itself is a message? What if addiction is not simply a curse but a disguised calling? a summons from the depths of your soul to seek meaning beyond the ephemeral. The addict's craving, the restless heart, the endless loop of desire and despair. These are not random misfortunes. They are signposts pointing to a spiritual crisis, a rupture between the conscious self and the archetypal self that calls for reunion. In my own life, I encountered the terror of the unconscious in ways that shattered my sense of certainty. The Red Book was born from my descent into that inner chaos, a confrontation with voices, images, and shadows that seemed both terrifying and sacred. It was there, in that confrontation, that I realized the psyche is not simply a mechanism to be controlled, but a living cosmos, a universe within that mirrors the cosmos without. Addiction, in its many forms, is part of that universe. It is a symptom of disunion, but also a potential catalyst for union. You must understand, addiction does not exist outside of the psyche. It is deeply woven into the fabric of the collective unconscious, a place where myth and personal history intertwine. Sometimes, the same symbolic patterns recur in your dreams and life, synchronicities that carry profound messages. Perhaps you have experienced moments when a coincidence feels too precise, too meaningful to be chance. These are the psyche's whispers, reminders that you are not alone in your suffering or your search. Addiction is often the psyche's desperate attempt to create order from chaos, to fill the abyss with something tangible. But the emptiness it tries to fill is not physical, it is spiritual. A hunger for wholeness, for connection to the numinous, to that which transcends the fleeting pleasures and pains of life. The spiritual purpose of suffering, then, is not punishment but transformation. The pain of addiction is a crucible. It burns away falsehoods, illusions, and superficial attachments. It forces you to confront your limits, your shadows, your fears. And in this fiery crucible, the self can be reborn, purified, clearer, more authentic. This process is not instantaneous. It does not follow a straight path. It is cyclical, like the seasons of nature. There are winters of despair, springs of awakening, summers of clarity, and autumns of letting go. The individual who undertakes this journey must learn to embrace the cyclical nature of transformation, to honor setbacks as part of growth, and to trust the deeper rhythm of the psyche. The return to the self is the end of addictive cycles, not because you suppress the urge, but because you transcend the need itself, because you find within yourself a source of nourishment that no external object can replace. This is the power of individuation, to become whole by integrating all parts of the psyche, including the shadow, the anima and animus, and the archetypes that shape your being. When this integration occurs, the addictive patterns lose their hold. The craving dissolves not through willpower but through awakening. The soul no longer needs to seek outside what it can find within. You become your own healer, your own sanctuary. It is important to remember that this is not a solitary journey. The self often appears through relationships, through encounters with others who reflect aspects of our unconscious. Healing addiction means also healing your relationship to others, to the feminine and masculine within, to the community, to the world. As you walk this path, you will notice signs of your transformation. Dreams will become clearer, synchronicities more frequent, your intuition sharper. These are gifts of the psyche, affirmations that you are moving toward wholeness. In closing, I invite you to embrace your shadow, to listen deeply to your pain, and to trust the process of individuation. Addiction may have been the storm, but you are the sea, and within you lies the vast, unshakable ocean of your true self. You have the power to transcend addiction, not by fighting it alone, but by understanding it, by befriending the parts of yourself it has kept hidden, and by walking courageously toward your own light. Are you ready to take that step? The journey awaits. As we approach the culmination of this journey, it is vital to recognize that addiction is not simply a problem to be eradicated, but a sacred invitation, a call from your deeper psyche to awaken and become whole. The battle with addiction is the battle for your soul, and the victory lies not in domination but in reconciliation. This reconciliation begins with embracing the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine forces that dwell within each of us. These archetypes hold the key to balance, creativity, and healing, Addiction often arises when these energies are out of harmony, when the wounded anima cries for recognition or the fractured animus lashes out in confusion. When you learn to listen to these inner voices with compassion, you begin to mend the broken dialogue within your psyche. There is profound power in this inner dialogue. It leads you beyond the limited self into the vast realm of the self, the eternal and unchanging center of your being. This self is the source of authentic freedom, the wellspring of strength that no addiction can touch. But the path to this self is a spiritual awakening, and awakening is never comfortable. It shakes the foundations of your identity, strips away illusions, and exposes wounds you thought were long buried. Yet, through this crucible of suffering emerges a new consciousness, one that no longer seeks to escape, but chooses to engage fully with life. Your addiction may have brought you to the edge of despair, but it can also be the gateway to a new life. The key is to surrender, not in defeat, but in trust. To surrender your illusions of control and to open yourself to the wisdom of your unconscious. This surrender does not mean passivity. It means active engagement with your inner world. It means sitting with discomfort, speaking to your shadow, honoring your dreams, and allowing the archetypes to guide you. It means becoming the alchemist of your own soul, transforming lead into gold, pain into wisdom. And remember, the process of healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral, moving ever deeper, ever closer to the truth. You may stumble, you may fall, but each time you rise, you do so stronger, more whole, more you. The greatest gift you can give yourself is the commitment to this inner journey. To choose courage over comfort. To choose truth over illusion. To choose yourself fully unapologetically. I leave you with this. Addiction is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your rebirth. You are not your addiction. You are the healer waiting to be born. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the presence of your true self within, and step forward into the light of your own becoming. Are you ready to walk this path? If you have heard even a whisper of truth in these words, then know this: your journey is sacred. Your struggle is meaningful, and your healing is possible. Addiction may have clouded your path, but it has not extinguished your light. The self, the part of you that is whole, eternal, and wise, is waiting patiently for your return. You do not have to walk this path alone. Reach out. Speak your truth. Seek those who will meet you with compassion, not judgment. Begin the work of shadow integration, of embracing your fractured parts with love. Each small step is a victory, each moment of awareness a triumph over darkness. Remember, transformation is born from courage. The courage to face your pain, to sit with your shadow, and to choose yourself every day. You are not broken beyond repair. You are broken open to become whole. So, take this moment now. Breathe deeply. Say to yourself, I am ready. Ready to meet the parts of me I have feared. Ready to reclaim my wholeness. Ready to rise beyond addiction into the fullness of my being. And if this message has touched you, share it with others who may be struggling. Let us build a community of healing and truth, for when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. The journey is long, but the destination is freedom. Freedom not from addiction alone, but freedom to live as your true self. Will you walk this path with me?